Yeah, the best of luck. In her new book, former stripper Samantha Bailey says that taking her clothes off for men was a great way to make money, that it was empowering, and that the strip clubs that she works in were a fun place to be.
Supporting campaigns to stop strip clubs opening is journalist Rosamund Owen, who thinks that it's naive to say that stripping is a great moneymaker. She says that clubs which offer this service strip women of their dignity.
But what do you think? Now, as we chat about this issue, you can tell us who you're siding with by voting on our worm, and there it is down at the bottom of the screen. And so if you go to itv.com/this morning, then you can make your voice known on that little worm at the bottom there. So let's start straight away. Welcome, both of you.
Welcome. Good morning, thank you.
So you went to Sylvia Young's School of Performing Arts to start with?
I went part-time. I was found by a photographer when I was walking down the street at 5 years old.
Right.
And he asked my mum and dad if he could take some pictures of me. A little bit dubious at first until he brought out his card, so we knew he was sincere.
Yeah.
And after a few little pictures, I went to Sylvia Young's and I did a few commercials and a little bit of modelling.
So how do you end up changing course? Because at 17, you were in a gentleman's club in Denmark.
Yes.
How do you choose that as a career choice rather than a different sort of performing arts?
I think because I've always done drama, I've always been quite theatrical, and I am very sort of cabaret by nature. And then being brought up in Essex, I've also got that sort of Essex flair.
Yeah.
So once I'd sort of done a few 9-to-5 jobs and I realised it wasn't for me, I realised that my auntie actually ran an agency that supplied dancers the whole of Scandinavia, and how her and her friends...
Strippers?
Yes.
Yes.
Dancers, strippers of Scandinavia, and how they sort of... It was almost like a flirtatious holiday when she went away.
I've got a daughter who's 18, I've got a daughter who's 16.
Yes.
So you were 17 at the
Yes.
time. And the thought of me sanctioning my daughter going to Denmark to take her clothes off in a club, I just can't imagine it.
At the time, my parents didn't know. They thought I'd gone off on like a holiday because I'm quite flamboyant. I was very self-sufficient. So if I was to pack my bags to go around Europe or travel, it was something that they were used to. So I went off and I sort of discovered this whole sort of... It was like cabaret to me, and to have it as your job description, eyelashes, hair, be glamorous, have a good repertoire of conversation, where ballroom-esque type dancing. I didn't even think about it as anything that could have been scary.
So you're painting a really, really glamorous picture. I mean, you are, and I know that your sort of take on this is that it's not the sort of seedy lap dancing club that we hear about or that we see in films or whatever it is. But really, honestly, and truthfully, I mean, that's the gritty side of it. The moments on the regular days.
I mean, every day, you've got to remember, just so I can clarify, my book obviously depicts, I danced 10 years ago and then I was a house mother, so I managed the dancers. So I've got, two ends of it. I went into management and I was down with the girls.
Were there bad days? Were there days when you felt unsafe?
No, Holly, there were bad days. Never days I felt unsafe. You're not unsafe in there because the security presence is, is so vast. You don't feel unsafe. You might feel a little bit unattractive or unloved.
Were you ever touched inappropriately?
Never touched inappropriately. Never. When I first danced and came to London, there was only 2 clubs, and you sit down with a guy, you'd get the schoolboy fidgety hands, he'd sit underneath his hands, and the amount of customers actually have to say, breathe. You can actually breathe.
Are you sitting there naked?
No, you're in your outfit, your costume. I mean, a lot of people believe the guys don't come in to see your costume. Of course they do. That's why the fantasy nights are the nights that are the most busy. So I was well known for, I was bordering on schizophrenia. I had so many costumes in my suitcase. There's nothing you couldn't have asked me to be that I wouldn't have been.
So you would strip completely naked, and then how does the evening go from there on?
Some clubs are topless.
Yeah.
Some clubs are fully nude.
Yeah.
So if you were sitting in the chair like you are now, Philip, and we were having a talk in a lap dancing club, and I was your flavour, or you wanted to get to know me a little bit better, we'd had the banter that we're having now, then I'd say to you, would you like a dance? And if you said yes, you'd sit back in your chair, you'd put your hands on your knees, and I would stand 2 foot away from you, so you're smiling, the thought of it already put a smile on Philip's face, and this is the reaction that you'd get.
But that's not always the case, though, is it? Because there are the private rooms, and there are, so a wealthy businessman will go in behind the curtain, and the girl disappears. And you say yourself that there was one girl who she had expensive properties, exotic holidays. She owned a vintage car. Is she doing all that from stripping, or were there extras?
No, I had VIPs, and I had a gentleman that would pay me, between £1,000 to £2,000. Now, where the concept concept is, because people can't believe that you can have an intellectual conversation within a club, they believe that there must be more going on, because you can't be there holding someone's attention with conversation. It's just about being ogled. It's just about, you know, being naked. As you can see, I have a very wide repertoire of conversation, and I did hold someone's attention verbally, and then it was visual. It was a mixture of both.
OK, so, Rosamund, let's come to you, because this is a little bit like if Disney did strip clubs, this is what it almost would appear to be. Do you think that these men are going there for intelligent conversation?
No, I can't say I think that would be their primary focus, because otherwise go to a bar, go somewhere else. But I think you are ignoring all the ways that it's very harmful to the women involved, to women in wider society, and actually to men. The third biggest cause of debt amongst men is frequenting strip clubs and pornography. And I think, so we sort of see this as this is the kind of the happy version of this. There are many much seedier clubs, particularly you find them in East London and other places, where extras are a part of what happens. And fine, we're also selling this to young women as this great lifestyle choice.
Well, you describe them as sad, joyless places.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I'm not a prude, but I think if a woman is going to get naked with a guy, make it joyful, make it fun. Don't make it this sad transaction. Women's bodies shouldn't be for sale in that way.
What about this obviously important conversation that goes on?
Well, I'm sure that's great, and I think there might be other societal things there that it might, you know, I think men probably don't have enough places where they can go and talk perhaps about their emotions, all sorts of things. But that it ultimately isn't why they're there. It can't possibly be. And also, we're sort of selling this as, I mean, you hear a lot said, oh, well, doctors do it, you know, medical students do it, and as though that sort of justifies it and makes it, oh, it's okay because the posh girl who's got other choices does it. Well, that's just not right. I mean, it isn't sort of legitimising. These are not sort of philanthropic organisations funding women through university, are they?
But Samantha sounds to me like a woman who is in control. We're talking about empowered, whether a woman is empowered in that situation. She sounds to me like a woman who is completely in control.
Well, I would say it's a power relationship without actually being empowered, because what are you empowered to do? I mean, it's ultimately, you're taking off your clothes, that's what you're paying, you know, it's sort of capitalism meets sexism in kind of the ultimate way. And yeah, fine, you know, a colleague of mine interviewed a boss of a strip club, which I won't name, and his line was, well, it's better than prostitution, isn't it? And if that's your selling point, I think that's really sad. And I'm not saying all clubs are the same. Of course they're not. And you know, I have been to one because I thought, you know, I was invited, and I thought, well, I want to know what I'm talking about, frankly. But I did find it an absolutely joyless place.
But it's becoming more and more acceptable. There's even one in Corrie now.
Yes, well, I know, exactly. And a quarter of young women, when interviewed, said that they think of this as a viable lifestyle choice. You know, this is something they would consider doing.
So how
and I think that's really sad to glamorise it like that.
If you're saying that there shouldn't be new ones or shut down what we've got, how could you possibly close this down? Because it's becoming more and more acceptable.
It absolutely is, and I think that's really sad. But I think we need a cultural shift. I mean, in Iceland, they've actually been outright banned, and the Icelandic Prime Minister said men just have to learn that women's bodies are not for sale, and I actually thought it was a very good message. And I'm not saying I would close them all, because I think you don't want to drive something underground. You need deeper changes. I think it would be much worse if it was underground. But I do wonder as well, I mean, women walking down the street past strip clubs, particularly in not so pleasant bits of London, you know, there is that thing of guys coming out and it not being a pleasant place to be. And also what it says more generally to young women, if they see this as an aspirational lifestyle choice, I think that's really sad.
I wouldn't say aspirational life choice, and where you make the description of it being seedy, why would stripping or strip clubs be immune to the high end and the low end? You know, you can have a very large health club, then you can have a spit and sawdust gym in, you know, in the East End. It's where people decide to go, and it's where girls decide to work, and you get what you put out. If you want to go into a seedy environment and act seedy, those clubs will, you know, allow you to do that. If you want to work in the high end, where I worked, where there were strict rules, there were grooming, you had the licensees that would come in as mystery shoppers to make sure nothing untoward was going on. Girls weren't going home with customers. Where I was and how I managed was very strict and very regulated, and no one went home with anybody under my watch. And I just can't let someone put stripping under that one big banner of doom and gloom, joyless. I mean, just the description of joyless and soulless itself. When you work in the clubs that I've worked in, the DJ's job is to keep the tempo up here.
You can have a high tempo outside, which I think what we're talking about is maybe even the tempo in your head.
And also, ultimately, all your self-worth, and you've said this in an article you've written, if you didn't make money, you felt fat, useless and ugly. And that's it, isn't it? Ultimately, it's up to the punter deciding what your self-worth is. And that's a really sad way to be, and it is about your physicality.
But when you work there, you put yourself in that environment. It's the same as someone that does modelling. You go to a casting, if you're not that person's flavour, they don't want you to wear their clothes, you get dismissed just the same way. So I knew what I was going into.
Let's have a final look at your thoughts here, and so far away I can't actually see it. So 39 for
61.
Rosamond and 61% for Samantha.
And Samantha, this is your story, Stripped, a life of strip and tease in Clubland.
Yes.
So that's your book, your story in there. Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Kitchen after the break.